Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where we are. Why does that happen? Like, I hate when I get a ding right out of the gate.
Also, are you sitting your laptop on your lap or something?
Yes.
Yeah, because you can tell you're moving it around, even though I don't think you mean to. You're moving.
See if this is going to work. What about now?
You're good as long as you don't move.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. We're going to talk about a book today that I've been reading that I think is going to be really helpful in marriages, in how you parent your kids, everyday work relationship, and friendships. But we do want to talk about a few things before we dive into that, like God winks and things of that nature. Ange, I'll let you just dive in briefly before we get into the book, the main topic for today.
Well, I love talking about God winks, and they happen all the time. We probably don't share them enough on here. But this particular week, well, hang on, let me just back up for the mamas that are like my age. This whole brain fog is real, and it really annoys the shit out of me if I'm going to just be real and honest on here. So I think anything that you might have going on in your life, a symptom is brain fog. So if you are going through grief, a symptom is brain fog. If you have any sort of autoimmune or thyroid issue, a symptom is brain fog. If you are really stressed or have a lot of anxiety or, dealing with a lot, maybe from a parenting perspective, that all can cause brain fog. If you are perimenopausal or
What?
menopausal, gosh, it's weird. One of the symptoms is brain fog. So I literally live in one big fog, I feel like.
You
So
think? You?
I know it's weird. It's weird. So that leads me to this God wink. So this week, the twins in their religion class had to write their baptism story. And some of the questions that you had to answer, were like who your godparents were. Well, that's easy. I remember that. What day you were baptized, who the priest was that baptized you. And I literally could not remember. Can you close your messages?
I do that and it doesn't stop the dinging. I closed them before we started.
Like quit them, not just close the box.
Yeah, no, I did that. Like when I go to toggle, my messages don't even pop up because I'm not in it.
Turn your phone, like mute your phone.
My phone is muted.
Okay.
That's why it frustrates me every time. I don't know why it does that because I
That's
make sure I quit my messages. I mean,
because I'm getting texts and mine aren't popping up.
my text messages, settings, take off play sound effect. See what that does. That may help. Okay, let's try it now.
I literally could not remember who the priest was. Couldn't even see his face, could not remember a thing about who this priest was. And obviously, I remember the baptism. I remember the godparents, obviously, but I couldn't remember the priest and I couldn't remember. Are you checking your football stuff?
No, I have my notes here.
Okay. It looks like you're not like paying attention.
No.
All right, I'm going to start all over. The twins in their religion class, they had to fill out the story about their baptism. And so some of the questions that they had to answer were the day of your baptism, who baptized you, who your godparents were, all the things. And for the life of me, I could not remember the priest that baptized the twins. We went to this church for a long time.
Hmm.
And obviously it's 17 years ago almost, but I couldn't even picture who this priest was or what he looked like. Nothing. It was just like blank. And I couldn't remember like a day that they were baptized. And of course, I feel like not very many people are going to remember an actual date. I mean, do you remember the date, your kiddos, if they were baptized? Because
No, they were baptized and I have no idea.
no idea, but
No.
you probably knew the priest, didn't you? Or no?
Yeah, I know Shay did Dane,
Yeah.
and then I'd have to think about the other
Yeah. So
two.
it
I think Father
bothered me.
Thomas did Carter, and then Father. I can see the other priest. He's
I
passed
couldn't even
away, but I can't remember his name for Lexi. But yeah,
it bothered me. Like, why can I not remember this? And I asked my dad, I asked the kid's dad, I'm like, do you remember who the priest was or like when they were baptized? And no one remembered. Late, I didn't, my mom was busy, so I couldn't connect with her, but later she did remember. Anyway, so I ended up calling the church and to get that information. And later they text me the information of who the priest was and what day they were baptized. And guess what day we baptized them on?
Feels like a day you should remember.
Hallie's birthday. January 17th, 2009. Just a few, they were born, it was a month later after they were born, but on Hallie's birthday. Later, then I'm like, God, why wouldn't I remember that? I guess at the time, it's significant because she prayed so hard for them, right? That we would naturally baptize them on her birthday. But I mean, after that, never even remembered that it was on Hallie's birthday. And I get that text and I'm like, of course. Of course we baptized them on her birthday. Why wouldn't we?
It's a little brain
This is
fog.
crazy. So a little God wink that made me
Love that. And yeah, once you said it, once you shared it with me, I was like, oh yeah, that's not
seems right.
not even surprising at this point. Well, we have not reviewed a book in a hot minute, and we did one last spring after we got back from our anniversary trip, and now that's been about 7 months ago. And so I have been reading a book for work that I really like. I usually try to encourage my family to read books that I read that I really like. This one I actually haven't pushed on you guys too much because I feel like it's actually somewhat, this is a little selfish. It's kind of given me the upper hand in some,
You think so?
with the kids it has for sure. You keep telling yourself that it hasn't with you, but with kids it definitely is something that I've been able to utilize because this book is called The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher, and it's about avoiding arguments and keeping your conversations moving in positive directions. And so, really like the book. A lot of very helpful tools. He's actually an attorney, and he doesn't like go into like detail on like cases, things like that. It would be like crossing his rights with the bar, things like that. But just he shares tactics that are applicable in everyday life in our homes, whether that be in our relationship with our significant other, kids, our workplace, ships. And so I thought we would just talk about that a little bit today because as we have learned so much, the grief journey is about communication. It's very important that we communicate regularly. And we've had seasons where we haven't been good at it, right? Sometimes we've missed each other and not gotten it right. And a lot of times it has to do with the communication, how we're handling it or not handling it. And so I think that this just provides a really good framework that's going to give clarity, humility, and purpose in how you communicate with those people that are around you. For you specifically, Ange, I just would ask, like, I know communication is something you've always valued since the time that we first started dating. You were really looking for a partner that could communicate well. There have been times I've done it well, times I've not. I like where I'm at right now in my communication, but I would just talk to you or open that up to you and see what your thoughts are as far as this journey as a whole.
Yeah. Well, even for myself, it's been so hard to communicate clearly what I'm feeling, what I need. And a lot of times you kind of like sometimes get tired of talking about things. And I know it impacts all of our relationships if we're not consistent with how we're communicating or learning ways to even communicate with our kids with different things that they're going through. And so, in full transparency, I've not read this book. Eric keeps sharing different parts of it. And so I was like, we need to just talk about that book on the podcast because I think highlighting a few key points of it, I think would probably resonate with our listeners because it's resonated with me as you shared different parts of the book of how to just be able to have a better conversation with people.
And I would say from our blended family perspective of how we started this podcast, it's been very helpful for me in dealing with certain
Well,
children as well. So that's been
right. And we
helpful.
just recently had to sit some of the we call them the at home kids down and just kind of talk through budgeting and expectations of how we navigate that, and how we split some bills with the other parents, and just some expectations that I think the kids were not understanding, kind of like why we do certain things, how budgeting works. No, we do not have an endless pot of money, is what the expectation was, because we prioritize doing things with them. It's, their understanding of that is all of a sudden like, there's, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, the expectation is that like that's just a continual flow, and it's not. So I think this book helped drive some of that conversation too, around how do you sit down, how do you listen to them, but also be very direct around expectations.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing I would just talk about that the book is really hones in on, and I actually get mad at myself when I don't do it well. There are still times like with Dane that I'll get into it with Dane and I don't utilize some of the skills that I've learned in the book. And that frustrates me because I enjoy the conversations much better when I do pay attention. And the first thing is the power of the pause. It's and so many of us think we have to respond immediately. And if we slow down and breathe, so, like the first thing he talks about is your breath, and in the early chapter or two, talks about different breathing techniques that can slow you down. Just a quick count to 3 will help you before you respond to people. And he has different breathing tools of how you can breathe in, and then if you breathe out your mouth with your lips slightly pursed, that helps even more based on the little bit of resistance that you give that exhale. And so with practical points behind that, but think about it when you're in a difficult conversation with your spouse, when you're in a difficult conversation with your coworker or your boss. So often we feel ourselves getting like really amped up. We get triggered, as he talks about often in the book, and we want to respond very quickly. And a breath will help you regain control of your emotions and help you to regain control of the conversation in a lot of places. Because there are some conversations where, say, your kids as teenagers, they want to get you worked up. Like they
Mm-hmm.
know how to push your buttons. But if you can control your breathing and breathe through the first initial parts of the conversation, you can take back control of the conversation. And so I think that's really important. Think about we've talked about in our grief journey. Pastor Dave talked about it when he was on this. Breathing really brings us back to God and centers us. And so I think that's why when people take yoga, the breath is such an important part of that journey. Breathing when you're a runner is incredibly important. And these aren't things that are in the book. I'm literally just taking life experiences to share how important breathing can be just to a conversation. So he highlights that initially right out of the gate.
I think something we use all the time just in my work is listen to understand, not to respond. And I know I have to remind myself of that all the time, whether it's a work conversation or it's a conversation with a kid or two that maybe likes to poke.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, okay, I'm immediately like thinking about what I want to respond with versus just trying to listen to understand. And I think that's also setting the example for our kiddos too, is how to react. And that's something, they may not grasp until later in life, but setting that example for them, that calmness and that breath diffuses the situation, but also is a great example for them.
Something I thought about that you were talking about there with talking about pushback and walls as you get closer towards the end of the book, he talks about, a lot of times when people are, they're feeling very tense and they put their walls up, which you and I have talked about that with you often. And he talks about the thing is you're trying to protect yourself. But unfortunately, when you put those walls up, a lot of times you actually aren't letting the person understand you. And in reality, you wouldn't even have the wall if the person could understand what you're feeling. And so by putting up a wall, then you are actually not giving the person an opportunity to communicate with you in a positive way. And that means they have to do work on their end too. But I found that to be very interesting. And I was thinking about you as I was reading it today. Just how you put a wall up to shut somebody out, but really you're preventing them from understanding where you're coming from.
Well, and that's that's a great thing to unpack in the spirit of communication, because in that putting up that wall, and I've had to really think about this too with the kids, because it sometimes it happens to our kids. Putting up the wall is not necessarily to shut someone out. It feels that way to you. But for me personally, whenever I go into this like fight or flight mode, and maybe I'm really struggling with something, putting a wall up feels like it's shutting someone out, but it's really to sort of armor myself to sort of feel everything that I'm feeling. It's almost that listen to respond. It's almost like listen to understand versus respond internally for me. Like, why am I feeling this way? What is causing this? How do I process this? And it's still that balance between how much is internal versus how much is externally that someone can help me navigate. Sometimes you can help, sometimes you can't. But again, it goes back to the power of communication and really listening to yourself initially before you even respond to other people.
Yeah. And in those scenarios, he also has chapters in the book on setting healthy boundaries and framing conversations, another chapter on framing things so that you can set things up for yourself and for people that you're going into communication with. One of the other earlier things that I thought was so important, and I said this to you early on when I was reading it, was that he talks about focusing on repairing conversations and relationships rather than winning. And he's just very clear. If you think you've ever won an argument, you've actually lost. There's never been an argument won that you didn't lose something because you've damaged the other person, that relationship you have with them at some point in your victory. You may be right, but you don't have to make sure they know that you're right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you always lose something. It's just a very pointed display in the book about how when you are all in to win, you will hurt that relationship. And that a lot of times that happens in our marriages, right? And then a lot of times you cannot repair what you've said to win that argument. And I think that's it was a really powerful part. When you focus on repairing a relationship rather than winning an argument, you talk through the conversation. It's a conversation. It creates a healthier dynamic for your relationship long term. And so I think that's really important. And, he asked the question, what does this relationship need more than my point right now? And sometimes I think that's a great question to ask, whether that's between you and I, whether that's between us and one of our kids. Is that argument worth winning?
Mm-hmm.
And and why?
Boy, that's such a huge point. I remember you saying that early on when you were reading the book about not focusing so much on being right or winning. And gosh, everyone wants to be right.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, everybody wants to be right. Our kids want to be right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be right. You want to be right.
I
Like,
really don't, guys. Just don't let her tell you that.
okay, okay. Um, but that's hard. Like, I have to check myself too, because I want to be right. I don't like to lose, I guess. And so when you're going through a discussion, everyone's naturally competitive. There is some aspect to competitiveness, which is a healthy thing to have, because that gives you that grit to win whatever you're battling, whatever you're facing. But in our conversations, that's a hard thing to let go of. Did he have like tips to how do you let go of wanting to win? Or you're not sharing those so that you
Yeah, that's right. I
win?
have
Is
to keep
that
those
right?
myself.
Yeah.
No, off the top of my head, I don't actually recall that. I think it just stuck so much. It's a humility thing, right? Back to the overarching theme of the book. There's a humility in having the next conversation, and it's about not arguing. It's about building relationships. So, and he gave tools for that even later in the book, though, on how many times do we have a conversation and we start with, this was a great one that just struck with me, was you're always on your phone. Like when you make you statements, you're always on your phone. When you make I statements to your kids, your partner, your boss, it's more disarming. So I really enjoy it when we spend time together and we're just not on our devices. Like such a more friendly way rather than, it's an accusatory whenever we say you towards someone else. And so he gave several examples of that, just everyday life examples where you turn it around and flip it. And it does sound so much more kind, friendly, and like you're trying to build your relationship rather than, all right, we're gonna start round three right now, and you're always on your phone. It doesn't come across well. The other thing is when you are I think about this for difficult conversations with coworker or children. We've had this happen before. When a person says something to you that is incredibly just rude and hateful, a lot of times that's coming out of a place where they're in their defense mode. And so a tactic is for you to take a breath really quickly. Don't shoot back at that person. Take a breath. And then for you to take control of the conversation, you would just say, I'll just use your name. You don't say hateful things, but Angie, I'd like for you to repeat what you just said to me out loud again. And 9 times out of 10, when the person in their mind's like, oh God, I said something awful, what then comes out is like, I don't, no, I'm not going to say that again. They know what they said was awful. And so you take away their power. And then if they continue like, well, I mean, what I said, it's like, and what was your reasoning? Were you trying to embarrass me? Did you want to make me feel less than you? Did you like ask questions like to then put that person, you're not putting them back in their place, but you're really making them think through the mean, hurtful, hateful thing that they said to you at that time. Because a lot of times when people are thinking about it, they're like, God, I shouldn't have said that. We can both think of scenarios where we've had kids that are teenagers say something that you could see on their face when they say it. They're like, shoot, I shouldn't have said that. But now they feel like they got to double down on it because they're deep into it. So if you can take back and be like, I don't know, you should say that to me again out loud for everyone to hear. I'd like for you to do that. A lot of times they won't actually do that because now they know that you're not getting worked up. And so that's kind of a big deal. So tone, word choice, approach are all very important as we think about what the next words to come out of our mouths are, because every single thing we say leads to the next conversation. And at the end of the day, if there's a next conversation, you're moving in a positive way with whoever you work with, a friend, spouse, kid, whatever that looks like.
Well, we also know that words matter. And
Mm-hmm.
in the you speak with the future in mind. Whatever you say, your kids, your coworkers, whatever, they're going to remember that,
Mm-hmm.
right? It matters. And there's been so many times we've had conversations with our kids and they pick up on like one thing out of context that we said. And it's like, oh my gosh. It's where I think conversations have to be very thoughtful, intentional. You have to be prepared for them, because there's been scenarios where we flippantly have shared something and then it's like, oh my gosh, they've totally taken this out of context. And now your future conversations are going to be extremely difficult. Also, in a relationship aspect of it, we know that women never forget anything either. So it's really double hard for you
Mm.
guys. I do have some sympathy for that for a second, for a
Brain
second.
fog. Brain fog.
It's weird that brain fog like really clears up instantly, that when we're in a discussion, it's like, wow, if I could just grasp that memory all the time, I would just
Ugh.
be amazing.
How many times does someone, and I know that I'm guilty, so let's just not think about me in this scenario, but do you get interrupted in a meeting at work?
All the time.
Yeah, there's an entire chapter just that talks about that and how to handle that. And initially you don't like come right at the person because then it makes you look like you're the bad guy. But like the second go round, when they start to interrupt you again, then you're like, Bill, hey, that's the second time that you've cut me off. And I do want to hear what you have to say. But if I can't get through what I'm trying to point out here, then we can't actually discuss what your thought is. And he gives several examples of that so that you're very kindly pointing out, hey, you're interrupting me and I can't allow you to keep doing that. When you do that, then you take back control of the conversation that you're in. Also, boundaries, so important, right? Whether we have ex-spouses, ex-boyfriends, girlfriends, boundaries with our kids, boundaries with certain coworkers, entire chapters on how to set healthy boundaries with those people in our lives so that they know, and it's never, yes, you can try and it does sometimes work. Just the I'm not going to have that conversation with you. That's not what we're here to talk about, sort of thing. When people are always trying to grab that thing from the past, that memory thing you were just talking about, there is a call. Hey, that's actually not what our discussion is about. But several examples of how to set healthy boundaries when you go to have a conversation with somebody that needs to be had.
What else?
We're pretty much through it.
Yeah, it can be a short episode.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if, 1 second. Okay.
All right, so as we get ready to wrap up, just a quick overview. Again, I really think if you want to check it out, the book is called The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher. Angie, I think you just leave it at this. I don't think that you need to get deeper into it. Yeah, I don't think you have to. I think you're already really good at these things. So leave it there.
Okay.
But
You're not recommending it to me. Is that what you're saying? Because
everybody
you
else,
want to keep all the little
the
hacks in the
three,
book to yourself.
yeah, the three key points I would say is one, pause before responding and breathe. Focus on repairing relationships, not winning the conversation. And then speak with the next conversation in mind, which means that you want the relationship to be positive and to continue to go. So I just think at the end of the day, it's one of those things that can really help relationships in your home and in your workplace, and then again with friends. So would highly recommend. The book's an easy read, very quick read. Yeah. So if you're looking for a new, just a quick pickup before the end of the year, I think you can read it in a couple of weeks. Angie, I know we have a few things that we want to pray for today, and I'll let you dive into that first.
Yes. So if you are local to Columbia or Jefferson City, you're aware that last weekend, was that last weekend?
Mm-hmm.
You're aware that last weekend there was a shooting in downtown Columbia, and this sweet girl lost her life because of it. And it's instantly sort of connected with this story a little bit because so much of it resonated with Hallie, and she was, college student, had her whole life ahead of her, similar age, similar.
Into
I'm trying to say, yeah, similar injuries, similar loss, organ donor, all the things, like so many similarities. And my heart just like, you ache for that mom. I just literally, I feel it. I'm such an empath when it comes to this stuff. You literally just can feel that pain and that fight that she will have. And after a few posts on her Facebook, I ended up reaching out to her and connected. And Eric and I were able to chat with her and her husband after church today. We're recording this way early, guys. This is normally we're last minute, but this is a week before we actually air it. But we'll share more later on. There's just it's chilling almost, the similarities between our two girls even, and this mom is so faith strong, and you can just see the fierceness and the fight and the not today Satan type of approach she has on life, which is, gosh, it just keeps going back to those two words I say all the time: painful beauty. It's everywhere. And so my prayer for her is just, gosh, there's the hard days ahead, the weeks, the months, the years, all of it. Just pray for her and her fight. Just it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
I'm just praying for. I would like to build on that a little bit and pray for this city that we live in, that I have lived in for over a quarter century now, because I have watched it over the last 20 years start to go in the wrong direction, especially the last five since COVID. It's really taken a turn with violence, with continual crime, homelessness, drug problems, and through our church, I know that we have a beautiful town. Like I see our church, the Crossing, just continuously giving back to the city. And I see through doing a charity event for an organization called Coyote Hill Friday night, that there's beauty happening in our city. But I pray that we would have enough great and good and kind, loving people that we could take this city back on a path that Jesus would like for it to be, because it's not on that path. Like there's many of us doing the Lord's work, but there's many people that are trying to take away what was once a thriving, beautiful city. And so I do pray for it, that God would continue to intervene and bring more hearts to Jesus so that we could continue to have an effect and an impact on the city of Columbia, Missouri, because right now it needs it. And so that would be my prayer, is for this city as a whole. Because if you're not from Missouri, we have, with the students here, about 180,000 people, maybe a little more than that, maybe closer to 200,000. And I would really like to save the city. It sounds extreme, but I really believe that if we continue down the path we're on, 10 years from now, I won't want to live in this city. So that's all. That's how I would that's a prayer that I'm praying.
And I just have an ask of our listeners, is to do something kind for someone this week. And if you want to comment on our post when this drops, share with us. Because I just think the world needs kindness. It needs random acts of kindness for other people. And it's the small things that make a difference to people that are struggling.
So true. All right, that is what we have for you guys this week. I hope you pick up the book. I hope that you have a wonderful week and do something kind for someone. Angie and I appreciate each and every one of you. We love you. Thank you. God bless.